Let's get ready to rumble!
5 Live Boxing.
Good evening, I'm Eleanor Oldroyd. Between now and 9:30, we're going to discuss the big British world title fight between super middleweight champion Carl Froch and George Groves. You'll be able to hear it live on 5 Live from 9:45 on Saturday night. And today's press conference has set things up nicely.
I've come here today to do him a favour, tell him exactly what I'm going to do. So I hope on fight night, Carl, you take my good advice and you make some adjustments towards it.
Well, we can train for that now. I'm coming out in round 1. I'm going to get ready for the double right hand.
You're going to train for that, yeah?
The double right hand, so I'll just get my left glove up. Brilliant. I know what to do, thank you.
You've got 48 hours.
Ridiculous, that's all I can say. Embarrassing.
What's
pathetic.
Embarrassing? What's pathetic?
You are.
Why?
Because what you're saying, what you've been saying for the last 10 weeks.
What have I been saying for 10 weeks?
Well, I'm going to go through it all. You know, just read up some of your own words. It's pathetic.
Tell me.
You've embarrassed yourself, and on Saturday night, I'm going to get a chance to put it right. Then trust me, I'll put it right. You're in a world of trouble, and you're going to learn some respect. And you're
learn some respect? What respect, Carl?
Listen, define
respect.
You're getting annihilated on Saturday night. Everybody knows it. When you've mixed at the level I've mixed at and been confronted with the opponents I've been... And these world-class fighters conduct themselves with a bit of class, a bit of dignity. You know, they say the right things. You're a world-class fighter,
Carl, because you said you was going to kill someone.
They say the right things. Where are you pulling that one out of the bag from? You know what I mean? Can you just pipe
before
down?
Your last fight, you told everyone at a press conference you was going to kill your opponent. Didn't the board have to investigate that?
You know what? There's an old saying: you can't argue with stupid.
Well, with me in the studio, 5 Live's boxing commentator Mike Costello and Rob McCracken, who trains Carl Froch. Evening, gentlemen. Nice to see you.
Evening, Ellie. Evening.
Now, Mike, today's antics have added extra spice to a build-up that was already pretty heated.
Yes, and what's playing out here is that George Groves is taking a huge step up in class. Froch is vastly more experienced, and it seems that Groves has decided to try to close the gap by playing these mind games, which are now 10 weeks old. But there were signs today, I thought, that he's just starting to discover the magnitude of the challenge that's ahead of him. He's been in a big fight before, similar to this in terms of trading insults against James DeGale 2 years ago. The difference there is that they'd met as amateurs. So in a sense, Groves was going into known territory. He knew his opponent and he'd beaten him as an amateur. And winner or loser, you don't forget those kind of experiences. This is different. He doesn't have that kind of advantage here. And as Robert McCracken said, on the top table today, we know how good Carl Froch is at the highest level. We don't know how good George Groves is. He might be better than anything we've seen so far, but that's one of the fascinating elements about this whole contest.
Rob, listening back to that, you were rolling your eyes. What was going through your mind when you were sitting at the top table today?
Yeah, I just think it's just strange the way he's acted throughout the whole build-up to this fight over 12 weeks. Some of the statements he's made, and he keeps telling us he only speaks the truth, are very odd, not factual, no real truth to a lot of what he's saying. So it's just strange how he behaved. Carl was right. You know, he's boxed at world level for 5-6 years now, and they do conduct themselves in a classy way. They speak when it's their turn. He constantly interrupts and talks when people are talking. And he just seems, you know, pretty inexperienced in dealing with the media and inexperienced in dealing with, you know, top fighters. And he talks like a little kid at times, and Carl is correct. It can be very embarrassing and cringy.
And what about this business of him revealing his tactics, saying, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to hit him with 2 rights. I'm going to take him on in the centre of the ring. Have you ever heard anyone say anything like this before?
Yeah, you hear fighters say what they're going to do in contests and stuff, but I think, you know, it's not really about that for me. It's about the manner of the way, you know, he's acted and conducted himself. It's strange. He could have showed lots of confidence. It's great if you're confident, you're unbeaten, you think you're going to win. You know, you put that across at press conferences, and that's your platform to show people what you're about. He's used the press conferences and the television appearances to try and goad and annoy and irritate the champion in a way where he knows there's very little the champion can do in terms of responding other than to argue with him. And, you know, Carl's a professional. That you don't really want to go down that route. And Carl will constantly cut him short because he doesn't want to argue and look bad for the public, because the reality is he's a top world champion and he's tried and tested, and Groves simply isn't.
But, you know, Rob, when you're at the press conference top table there, like the last press conference, it's usually fairly vague. I'm going to knock you out, you know, and you better beware of my punching power and all this kind of stuff. But today it was very detailed. Like I can't remember hearing before. The bell's going to go and I'm going to hit you, Carl, with 2 right hands. I mean, what was going through your mind when he was saying this?
Yeah, you've got to... He keeps telling us that he only speaks the truth. And you've got to take him at his word. He's told us he's going to hit Carl with 2 right hands at the start of the contest, and then, basically he's going to move around the ring. So we'll see how he gets on doing that. But it's just a little bit odd and a little bit not the norm for some of the stuff he said and the way he's carried on. But I think the reality is, when the bell goes, the fight will unfold in a certain way, and there'll be not a lot he can do to control that.
Well, let's hear from George Groves, because speaking shortly after the press conference, he gave Mike this explanation for revealing his game plan.
In my opinion, we've seen so much of Carl Froch. There's no possible way he's going to be able to adjust to what I've prepared. What I've prepared is the right thing to do against Carl Froch. So give him 48 hours to sit and stew on it. We'll see. I put it on the line now. If I go out and do what I say, then he sits at the end of the first round and goes, this cat's for real, he knows what he's on about. And all this stuff he said in the pre-fight build-up, is that for real as well? And then the second round successful, my third round successful. And then we'll see where he goes from there, because he can't change and adjust, Mike. He is what he is. And I know I've got the physical attributes to beat him. It's just about having the composure to beat him. And if it was a straight up battle of composure, then I'd win hands down. But that's not how boxing works. You need to keep yourself nice and composed for 12 rounds if need be. And that's what I plan to do.
He's convinced you won't do what you've just said.
We will see, won't we? Fight night, we will see. We will see. I'm a realist. Like that's the way I prefer to prepare for a fight. That's the way I approach every aspect in my life. If I do something terrible, then I expect the people around me to tell me. I took a kick on Soccer AM the other day, and I got at the end of it since, because I know it was awful. I ain't gonna go home and lie about it. Same with boxing. If I do something wrong, I need to be told. If I do something right, then I know, when I get told I'm doing something right, that I can believe it. You can't be perfect. You will make mistakes, but the mistakes are there to be made in the gym. Come fight night, you're as close to perfection as you can possibly be. That's what I will be Saturday night.
Now, Mike, George Groves sounded very calm, didn't he? He actually sounded quite reflective in that interview compared to what we heard in the press conference.
And that was a fairly quick change of mood, because I was the first to interview him one-on-one as they stepped down from the stage. And so I thought it was pretty impressive the way he was able to control his emotions like that. And part of what he's been saying across the 10 weeks has helped to build the sizzle and the sparkle that I was talking about early on, that's been infused into this fight now throughout the build-up. He's certainly played his part, but we're getting very close to the time now where he's really going to have to start to live up to this. And throughout the build-up, there have been a lot of comments from outside the two camps, almost a neutral view that George Groves has really got to Carl Froch. And that's always been said in the negative sense. But I think he's got to Carl Froch, and I'm not so sure it's negative. He's got to Froch and made him really concentrate on what he's doing.
Has he got to him, Rob? Because you're training Carl.
He's really annoyed him, and he's really irritated him. I think if George Groves spoke to anybody in the manner he spoke to Carl at the press conferences and the television appearances, anybody would be annoyed. It lasts 5 minutes. You leave the studio and you reflect on it. You talk about it. It doesn't change your plan in the slightest. And Carl Froch has been thoroughly professional in training for this, and he'll carry out the game plan. And it just doesn't matter what Groves has said. When the bell goes, Carl Froch's mind will be focused on the game plan and the training that he's done, and he'll put it all into practice, like he does, in fairness, time and time again. And as Andre Ward said this week, Froch has proved it time and time again, and he'll do that again on Saturday night.
There are mind games before every fight, aren't there, Mike? I mean, every boxer plays mind games, but does it actually ever affect the outcome?
It's hard to say, because Carl Froch said to me a couple of years ago, and it was a really telling statement, that you can say all you like to interviews with me and other members of the media and at press conferences like today, but it's the moment that you put your head on the pillow at night when you've really got to believe in what you're saying. And that's when Carl Froch says the champions are separated from the also-rans. But there have been times in the past when, on the one hand, champions have blown a fuse. On the other hand, they've found themselves completely outfoxed by the opponent. I do remember vividly Sugar Ray Leonard telling us in an interview we played out about 18 months or so ago that at the first press conference for one of the most amazing results of his career, when he beat Marvin Hagler, he said, and he's convinced that he won the fight at the first press conference because he got under Hagler's skin, and Hagler walked away, he believes, from that press conference just finding it difficult to believe how somebody like Leonard, after so long out of the ring, could have been so confident. And that played with Hagler all the way through, according to Leonard, all the way through. And it might well be that George Groves, who's worked for a long time with Adam Booth, who was a great fan of Sugar Ray Leonard, it may well be that that's the ploy he's trying here with Carl Froch.
Is that something you think is likely? I mean, will it affect Carl? Do you think, Rob? It struck me listening to there was there was a fly that he was kind of swatting away.
Correct. It is like swatting a fly. Apologies. The Ray Leonard Marvin Hagler situation. I watched the fight. I simply think Leonard was brilliant, and he was a brilliant boxer. I think Hagler wanted to beat him as much as he did before the press conferences after. I think Ray Leonard used it to the maximum, but I genuinely think Leonard was a brilliant fighter. I think it had very little to do with it. It probably made Hagler try harder and train harder. But this is a different level that Groves is stepping up to. He's never boxed anywhere near this level before. Froch is tried and tested at elite level. He's a huge winner. He's only ever lost to Andre Ward in a glittering career. And, you know, it's a hard task for any boxer in the world, let alone, you know, an inexperienced 19-fight pro from down the road. I think Groves will realise that dreams and plans don't always work when Carl Froch starts connecting. And he's heavy-handed. He'll hit him on the shoulder, the arm, the chest, anywhere. And then Groves' game plan will change because of the power of the punches he's being hit with.
Let's hear from your man, Carl Froch. He says he wasn't surprised by Groves' antics at today's press conference.
I was expecting a little bit worse, or a little bit more from George Groves in terms of trying to goad me and trying to wind me up. But I did a good job of keeping my cool. I came here today with James Bond in my head. Just thought, cool, calm, collective. Don't lose your temper, and speak clearly and precisely, and try not to get drawn into a verbal argument with stupid. And I'm not being horrible, but George Groves is more stupid than what I thought he was before today. And he showed me today that he doesn't believe in what he's saying. He showed me that. He was glazy-eyed. He couldn't get his words out properly, and he was picking up on things like comments I'd made in previous fights, which, you know, maybe a little bit unsavoury, which was just irrelevant. But I've not particularly enjoyed the press conference. I've not particularly enjoyed the first press conference with George, and I'm not looking forward to the weigh-in because of his attitude. It's very childish, but he's only 25. I've got to cut him a bit of slack, and he's got to try and draw some confidence from somewhere. And that's what he's trying to do, give himself confidence. But it ain't going to work, because Saturday night when the bell goes, speaking's not going to help him. He's got to back his words up with his actions. And he's not good enough. It's as simple as that.
When you say you're not looking forward to the weigh-in, Carl, is there still a danger that you might explode?
You know, sometimes I think I'm cool and I come here with a James Bond mindset, and then at the heat of the moment, you know, I'm a fighter. I've got that fighting spirit, and I feel like sometimes if somebody's being disrespectful to me, I've got a threshold. I can be a racing car in the red, and all I'm saying is it's not safe to have a racing car in the red, and it can only push me so far. And there's a chance of me exploding, but a slim chance, because I know the consequences of me exploding, what they will be. I know what I'll do to George Groves. I know I might say something that I shouldn't say, and it could all get out of hand. This is a professional sport. Boxing is an honourable sport, and I love the sport too much to bring it into disrepute and do anything stupid. And the very fact that I'm talking about it and saying this means that I won't explode. But inside, at times, sometimes, you know, it's very, very trying, and I'm having to really, really use my experience.
That's Carl Froch speaking to Five Live's boxing commentator Mike Costello, and Rob McCracken, who trains Carl Froch, is also with us in the studio. I know you've been with Carl this evening, Rob. Any danger you think that everything might boil over at the weigh-in tomorrow?
Not from Carl's side. Carl will be very professional. He's did this so many times on the big platform. It's a fantastic fight for British boxing. It's why we're all here. We're all looking forward to the fight. Coming away from the arguments and stuff, moving into the fight, I think you've got a tremendous world champion in Carl Froch, and you've got a pretty talented, prospect in George Groves, who has good power, has good boxing skills, and Carl Froch is tried and tested at the top level. It's going to be great for British boxing. Of course, we're sure Carl Froch will be victorious, but we'll find out how good George Groves is. Nobody really knows. But he's not to be taken lightly. He has some ability and some power.
Would you be more concerned 2 years down the line, Rob? Potentially yes, but maybe he'd have been beaten by that stage already. It's interesting to see how George Groves and James DeGale have developed throughout their careers, because I've always hoped, because I'm a boxing fan as well, that potentially we could have some British super fights, and hopefully DeGale will start moving through the gears now his knees healing up. But that's what the sport's all about for us: win the world title, beat the best in the world, and then fight the next British prospect who has talent, ability and power. And both of these boxers have that, so they're not to be taken lightly, and certainly George Groves isn't, and Carl hasn't taken him lightly. He's treated him with full respect in training, and he's lived the life over the last 4 months so that he can put on a devastating performance. But Groves is a good fighter.
Just give us a little bit of background, Mike, into where this bad feeling between the two of them started.
Well, largely it's because of a sparring session that took place in the early part of 2010 when Carl Froch was preparing for his first fight against Michael Kessler in Denmark, which he went on to lose. The sparring session took place at the English Institute of Sport, where he trains and where Robert trains the Great Britain Olympic squad. And Robert, as ever, was on the ring apron looking after Carl Froch. George Groves at that stage was being advised by David Hay, because Adam Booth, his trainer at the time, was otherwise engaged, and they've got very differing ideas as to how the sparring session went, and this is their views. These are their views, and Froch is first.
I think it was round one, George came out and started swinging and trying to load up and trying to prove a point, like some lads do. They come out and they've got an agenda, or they've got an ulterior motive to the spar. But I'm on it straight away, and I'm thinking, he's loading up here, he's swinging. So I didn't actively go out of my way to try and knock him out, but he was in the corner, like just off the corner, sat on the ropes defending. I could see the shot was there. I'd put 2 or 3 into him, left, right, left, all, and he was ducking low. And I thought, the right hand's on here, shall I take it or shall I not take it? And 9 times out of 10 I wouldn't take the shot. If it's a free hit, usually I wouldn't take it, but I took it, but I sort of half pulled the shot. That's why I was surprised it dropped him, because I hit him with sort of a pulled punch. I didn't follow through, because Rob would have told me off. I would have been in trouble with my coach, Rob McCracken. He would have said, what you done that for, you know? So I sort of half hit him with a right hand, and it sat him on the floor, either on the bottom rope or on the floor, sat him down, and he was gone. David A was cracking up laughing, because that's what David A's like. He's quite a character. And Rob got in the ring and helped him back to his corner.
If he's going to use that as a template for him winning this fight, he needs to really think, because actually, if you want to judge the rounds after 6 rounds, his only success was putting me down in maybe the 4th round, where it was a flash knockdown, knee touchdown, stood up, carried on, and that was it. As I said, there was no ambulance called. I wasn't, charted out, on a stretcher. 2 days later, invited me back. So if I was that bad, I doubt he would have invited me back. Went up to Nottingham and tore him apart, took him to pieces. And this was his last spar before Michael Kessler, and then he went out there and had his first defeat. His brother took me outside the ring and said, "Oh, you're fantastic, you'll be world champion, let me have a picture with you." Since then, his brothers forgot that as well. So it's something that an insecure person would cling on to. I've openly said he dropped me. Big deal. Yeah, he had big gloves on. Yeah, I had a head guard on. Big deal.
He doesn't make any secret about being flattened in sparring. And to be honest, he's been flattened by more than me in sparring. I think Callum Johnson knocked him out in sparring recently, and I'm hearing that he's been wobbled against a couple of other people and flattened again. I'm not sure who by, but he's been knocked out as an amateur, and he's been hurt as a pro a few times. So I think it's obvious and quite evident that George Groves has got a bit of a suspect chin, and what we call in the boxing business, we say glass jaw. So George has got a glass jaw, and it's not the best thing to be doing when you're fighting myself, Carl Froch, who's renowned for being quite a big puncher and for having a granite chin.
It makes a blind bit of difference on the night, because I won't be mentally tuning in and out, as you do sometimes in a sparring session, when things you're having it your own way, when you're not supposed to, because this guy's supposed to be a legend, an international superstar in the making. As I say, it's just sparring. In my last camp, I got put on my backside in back-to-back spars. Went up to Manchester, got dropped. Went to Denmark, sparred some Swedish kid and got dropped. You get up, you're frustrated. You're not sad or you're not doubting yourself. You don't go and sit in a dark room and hang your head. You just carry on. It's just get up. Why did that happen? Oh, it happened because I did this. Right, don't do that again. Okay, done. That's it. So sparring is just about preparing you for a fight. I haven't been dropped in this sparring sessions in any of this camp, so that's been pretty good. But come fight night, I'll be perfect, and he's gonna have to be on song to land, let alone drop me. So good luck to him.
The fact that I can take a punch means that I can take a couple of risks to get my punches off and land my effective shots, where on the flip side of that, George Groves can't take any risks, because if he gets caught on the chin with one of my punches, chances are he's going to fall over, and that's not very good in boxing.
Well, that was Carl Froch and George Groves as well. Rob, what are your memories of that sparring session?
Yeah, he was hurt at the sparring. It was round 1 and he was hurt, and we had a break, and then they did a couple of rounds, and that was pretty much it. But it's such a long time ago now. But I remember it clearly. And he came back. I think it was a few days later. It was about a week later, and he sparred with Carl and moved backwards. And it was one of those spars where nothing really happens, to be honest. But that's what sparring's like. There's not too much to read into sparring, in fairness. I think it's levels, and I think, sparring's one thing, fighting Carl Froch is another, and it's very different when you fight him. The gloves are very small, and it's serious, and he's boxed people before he sparred with, and I've spoke to a couple of them beforehand, and wondered why they think they can win the fight, and they feel that they held their own with him in sparring, which in some cases, they did, but in the fight they had no chance because the gloves are so small and the punches really hurt in the fight. So this is what separates the champions from the also-rans is the small gloves in professional boxing.
Let's have a bit more of a chat about George Groves. And one of the talking points, you mentioned it, Mike, there was in the build-up to this fight, he split from Adam Booth, who's been training him.
Yeah, they were together for all 19 of George Groves' fights so far. Adam Booth, who's made his name, of course, with his alliance with David Haye. And Adam Booth, even according to George Groves, was a major influence in Groves beating James DeGale. It was the tactical plan put forward and obeyed by Groves, but put forward by Adam Booth that was really strongly influential in the result of that fight, which was a close call for George Groves. But the announcement of the split came almost in tandem with the announcement of this fight being made just about 10 weeks or so ago. They've since been to the British Boxing Board of Control for a hearing to try to settle the dispute. And although Adam Booth is no longer George Groves' trainer, he remains his manager, so will get a share of the purse from this fight. George Groves is now working with another trainer, Paddy Fitzpatrick, but as far as the relationship with Adam Booth is concerned, Groves says he saw it coming.
If it was a shock, then yeah, it would be something that would take time to get over and maybe take some grieving or whatever else. But we've worked together for a long time. But we've had our ups and downs, and this ain't a surprise. We've had issues before in the past, and so sometimes they come up, sometimes they don't. The fact that I've got a fight in hand to prepare for means that even if I was emotionally affected by this, I wouldn't let it affect my preparations or my fight. You have tunnel vision. You just got to get on with the task at hand. That's what I'm doing here. I'm just excited. I'm excited to be part of such a big event and prepare for such a big fight that is taking over any other emotion. When Paddy, my trainer, leaves the gym each night, we touch fists, and he says it's been unemotional, which is Vinnie Jones's famous line. So that's pretty much what it is. I'm here to do a job, and why should I let anything else get in the way of that?
Well, that was George Groves, and you've known George Groves for a long, long time, Mike, I think, haven't you, since he was a young lad. Do you think he will have been affected by this split? Well,
what struck me from the outset is that this was a relationship which wasn't too distant from Carl's with Robert McCracken, and Robert has been so important in the whole journey of Carl Froch to becoming such a strong world champion. And I think Adam Booth played a very important part in the development of George Groves as well. And to lose that kind of influence at this time, for the first time you go into a fight without the man who's been with you right the way throughout the journey, it has to be a world title fight against one of the best world champions this country's ever produced. It's just the wrong time.
How important is that relationship between the boxer and the trainer?
Yeah, I think it's very important. mine and Carl's relationship's been well documented. It's been a highly successful one, and it's been great for me to be part of it and see Carl achieve what he's achieved. But I just get the feeling with George Groves that he's almost past listening, and I get the feeling that Adam Booth felt that, his position as coach and possibly as manager was getting to the point where it was almost untenable. I think Groves had probably stopped listening and probably thought he knew it all. And as we learn time and time again in boxing, you'll always learn something and nobody knows it all. And George will clearly find that out in his career without Adam Booth, who's guided him so well to this point.
And Mike, you're going to be ringside for 5 Live on Saturday night in Manchester, but it's not the only big fight taking place this weekend, because Manny Pacquiao's back in the ring.
Back in the ring after almost a year out. He's fighting in Macau, which is just across the water from Hong Kong, also across the water from China, where many say the future of boxing will exist. And he's fighting an Hispanic American called Brandon Rios. And really it's one to save his career, because he's lost twice in a row. And there's been an interesting development in Macau today from Pacquiao's promoter, Bob Arum, who's been saying that the fight against Floyd Mayweather, which everybody thought was dead and long since, might be revived. He says it's still a live prospect. It won't be anything like the draw it was, although it could be built again if Pacquiao fights well against Brandon Rios at the weekend. But that's interesting, because Amir Khan was seen as the front runner to face Mayweather sometime next year. But just today, Bob Arum, Pacquiao's promoter, is now saying that Mayweather against Pacquiao might yet happen.
Mike, thank you very much indeed, as always. Thanks ever so much to Rob McCracken as well for taking time out to join us in the studio this evening. And you can hear Froch against Groves live on 5 Live from 9:45 on Saturday night.